This is Blue White Illustrated. We are live, which makes everything incredibly convenient. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer with me today. Maybe a single generation of greatness here. I don't know. You guys aren't millennials, are you? Fitz, you're not a millennial, are you? You look like you're
Nate's
right on the edge.
When the cutoff is for that, I'm 39, so like maybe I'm young at heart. I'll say that.
Well, that's perfect. I think we'll just leave it with that. That's what's coming up this weekend, and that's what we're talking about. Penn State Football takes on UMass, but it's homecoming, generations of greatness. There's a lot of fun stuff going around with this game. We're going to be talking about all of that, including James Franklin's comments from last night and a report of practice, what we saw, what was interesting, all of which you can read at bluewhiteillustrated.com right now. Get the full in-depth details of what Fitz and Nate found yesterday, even the stuff that maybe we won't talk about here on the show. But coming up at the end, you take center stage. It is the BWI mailbag. We go out for the week the right way, which is getting your thoughts and questions on the air. So drop those in the chat. We have a good amount of room today in the mailbag for you here in the chat. So if you want to donate to the channel, that's always helpful for me to see your question and your comment, know that it's for the mailbag. But we'll be taking your questions regardless. Guys, just opening statements here on the show. Nate, how do you feel about the team coming out of the bye week into the second half stretch? I know we have this like non-conference game to start before final Big Ten tests are looming, but this is also still coming out of the halfway point. How do you feel about where the Nittany Lions are, maybe compared to where they have been in the recent years heading into this kind of stretch run that always seems to be the critical part of the season, is what I guess I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, when you said opening statement, I thought you were going to give me an opportunity to complain about reporters.
We'll give you that opportunity in a little bit.
Living in their mother's basements. No, so,
hold on. I know. Don't get in trouble. He did say the fan on the internet that creates the drama is in his mother's basement, not the reporter. So James Franklin, if there's anything he's proven this week, he's a stickler for what he actually said. So I just want to protect you from being flamethrowered on the internet.
I have a house. It's a great place. No, so where's Penn State right now? Look, I think that certainly from a statistical standpoint, they have done everything as expected, right? Defensively, they have dominated. I think that it is absolutely essential to point out that the offenses that Penn State has faced thus far this season are inept. They are worse than inept. They are bad. And so, to be honest with you, I think that UMass, even if it's just in spurts, gives them something, right, in terms of what James Franklin talked about on Tuesday about them being one of the more explosive offenses that they've faced. At least it's something. At least it's something to keep you on your toes. And then offensively, I think, I think that it is. It remains to be seen, right? We have not seen the full assortment of Penn State's arsenal, right, in terms of the receivers and working with Drew Aller, and we haven't really seen from Nick Singleton and Katron Allen yet their full capabilities from last year. So it's to be determined. It's to be written for those guys on that side of the ball.
Fitz, what about from kind of a feel-good, holistic standpoint? Where are they, in your opinion, heading into a critical stretch run in a year that everyone expects them to really, for real this time, but seriously contend for a Big Ten championship?
I mean, really, it couldn't set up better for this run. I mean, in terms of coming off the bye week, we're not going to hear about James Franklin's record after byes because it's UMass. Like, that's kind of awesome. Like, I'm very happy to avoid that storyline this week. And it's a nice, I mean, it's what you want. And I say, I'm going to preface this with all due respect to Don Brown and UMass, like that, I think they know what they are. And Penn State knows what they are. And this is a game that you get in, get out, get on with it, stay upright. The weather does not look fun at all. Like, that looks just like miserable, like Northwestern last year, miserable. But other than that, like, stay up and get through it and use this as it is, as a tune-up for Ohio State. Like, we can talk about Ohio State. They prep for Ohio State during the bye week. There are things that, all the things point to Ohio State. So, like, it's okay to talk about that. We're not in the 1-0 mentality here. We're not beholden to the 1-0 mentality. But you've got to use that as, like, this is I don't want to say it's strategically scheduled, because this game was scheduled a long time ago and the Big Ten schedule was not, but like, it lands pretty well for Penn State. Like, this is a chance for them to tune up and get their timing down. I think that that's really one big thing in the run game so far this year is, one guy's off, and then all of a sudden that guy runs into Nick Singleton, or that guy, drags down Katron Allen. You got to button that up essentially before you go to Columbus, because those defenders are bigger, faster, and stronger than what you've seen pretty much so far across the board. Iowa's still a very good defense. Like, I know Penn State did kind of what they wanted to do with Iowa and just smothered them, but like, Iowa's still a pretty good defense. But you're not going to see the athlete that you see next weekend.
For sure. Yeah. And that's kind of the point of this week, and the point of last week is it all is setting up for that game against Ohio State. And whether or not they get to the game, next week, they have their best opportunity to beat Ohio State in a long time because of that, the health of the team, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's setting up very well for Penn State to win that game, meaning the game against Michigan later, you want to win that game, but you need to get one of those two. So this week is very important because of next week. What's very important for me right now is to tell you that this show is one of the most follically impressive shows on the internet. Lots of dudes on here that have great beards. And Nate, I apologize for not including you in this, but the reason I'm talking about that is Caldera Lab took a look at our faces and went, yeah, the skin cream is important, but let's get these guys the beard stuff. So Caldera Lab is here with their fall October packages, and I'm going to say this right now. Get Caldera Lab, use the promo code BWI to get 20% off your first purchase. And if you are like me and Fitz and you have a beard and it is a part of your personality, like me, you want to check out their October beard serum, because if you're putting on your flannel, you're probably putting on you're growing your hair out and you're growing your beard out. So they have this new beard serum that I can show you right here. I have actually opened it up and used it already this week because I was getting a little dry. Again, premium products from Caldera. They are unbelievably sustainably sourced, and they're all natural products, which has to pass muster in my house, or I'd just be lying to you, and I wouldn't be using these products. My wife is a zero tolerance policy for natural products. So Caldera Labs, they passed the test. Fitz, what about you? How about you and your household with Caldera?
Still waiting on the beard cream, which I'm always in search of the perfect beard cream. I'm sure Caldera stuff is great, but I've been using their face wash and their under eye stuff. Me as a very pampered individual, not rugged at all. I've used it and I've liked it a lot. It's really good. I took it on my trip with me this weekend. Like, it has become a part of the travel staple as well. So I appreciate them sponsoring us, but it's good stuff. It's I'm shiny and radiant for a reason here.
They also
great.
They
Thanks,
have
bud.
the shaving elixir as well. So even if you don't want to shave your beard, you don't want to use some of the other products, you can use this, of course, the old ingrown hair on the neck from the straight razor, never fun. Using a good shaving elixir is always good. And Nate, they have products for clean shaven people as well. So promo code BWI for 20% off. You are not going to get a better deal than that anywhere on the internet. And by the way, I love the science here. 94% of men's skin shows overall younger looking, healthier appearance after using Caldera Lab for a few weeks. So it is really good stuff. Really good stuff from you guys is what you gather at practice. So let's get into practice observations from yesterday. The Nittany Lions getting ready for this game against UMass, but also, like I said, the second half of the season. Nate, you were with the defense. Let's start with you.
Yep.
What were your observations? Any interesting nuggets coming out of last night?
Yeah, I don't know. I have not been with the defense, right? So we kind of swapped roles a little bit this week, but it was all turnover generation, right? It was all interception stuff for everybody. They obviously eventually got into their tackling and ball security, or excuse me, like fumble recovery type stuff as well. But I did think, the way that Anthony Poindexter was kind of riding his safeties for needing to not just be in position to make a play, but then to capture it, right? To finish the play and make that interception, I thought was, somewhat intriguing. But I'm burying the lead here. We're always looking for personnel stuff, right? And so Jamal Lions was back on the defensive side of the ball, defensive end that obviously played in the first two games for Penn State. A depth piece, but still one that I think Penn State has in its plans moving forward, at minimum, to use up his 4 games and potentially more, depending on how the rest of the season plays out.
especially with how he was used early in the season. We had the conversation. He got in for one snap against the team
Yep.
previously, so probably been holding him back a little bit, maybe saving one of his games for this week. So I think that's a big part of this the conversation, as well as depth players you might expect to see in the game, which we can get to it in a little bit here on the show when we preview the game. Fitz, on offense, what were your observations you want to share? And by the way, once again, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Sign up right now. Get all of their insights last night, so you don't have to wait for the show in the morning to hear some of them, and you get them in their complete form. So sign up at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Fitz, what do you want to share?
Before I forget this point that you just kind of made, with the freshmen, like they're going to save some of those guys for down the stretch, and not necessarily in like an every down position role, but like James Franklin said it last night, like they're going to save like 2 games for guys to play special teams at the end of the year. Like they think that might be important for a guy like Cam Wallace, maybe a guy like Andrew Rappel. Yeah, Kevion Keys is a guy that like kind of the alarm goes off when I hear a comment like that. So like, I think you'll see a bunch of those guys this weekend, but at the same time, you save them for the end, get them that special teams, that vital special teams experience that's really helped out guys. I mean, if you're coming out and playing as a redshirt freshman, that little snippet of special teams work is really how you got there. So I think that's important to say, and I was definitely going to forget it if I let that one get away. So I'm excited to see those guys this weekend, but I think there's interest in that strategy of when do you use those guys down the stretch, and how do you use those guys down the stretch, and how does it, I guess, sort of springboard them into the offseason, because the bowl game doesn't count. Like the postseason, whatever the postseason lies ahead for Penn State is not going to count. So you get those 4 games in any way that you know how. And it seems like, special teams over the last month of the season seems like a good way to go. So I just wanted to get that one out there. In terms of offense, didn't see JB Nelson. I think that's the main takeaway from everything.
Yep.
He left the Northwestern game. Was not at practice last week, was not at practice this week. Venga Ione, the guy that, is the obvious candidate to replace him at guard. But I think they're going to play around. I think they're going to put some other guys in there. James Franklin mentioned after practice last night that Caden Wallace has been repping through there. You could see Drew Shelton in a situation where he would be inside. Nick Dawkins, of course, is there. And then, of course, the young kid, Anthony Donka, at guard as well. So I think you're going to have the opportunity to see more of those guys in there this weekend. Dominic Rowley, more of a center, but like, is that a situation where you see him playing around or moving somebody, sliding Dawkins over to guard, for example? So I think that's an interesting thing. You're playing Trey Wallace highlights for a reason. Trey Wallace looked to be like full speed, as you just see him running full speed, running a post pattern. Oh boy. Running the I mean, I can't, like, we've been beating this horse to death and beyond about how important Trey Wallace is to the passing game. And hopefully we see that this week. Katron Allen, there you see on the video, if you're watching on the YouTube, smiling, having a good time. He, of course, missed a significant chunk of that Northwestern game as well. So fresh faces coming back off the bye week. Unfortunately, no Nelson, but otherwise seemed pretty solid. And then they finished their drills in the open media session by just chucking it downfield for the hell of it. So that was fun to watch.
You and I, before we got there, we're over with the offensive line watching some one-on-ones. And again, go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for more of what we saw there. I want to ask you about the conversation that I was, as soon as James Franklin said, yeah, we've been playing Caden Wallace at guard. That has been the Caden Wallace to guard, please, for 2.5 years here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Just from a let's play with the chess pieces here for a second. If something else happens on the interior, do you think it is better to move your veteran tackle in and let Drew Shelton play that position where maybe he's at his best, or do you put Shelton at guard? Which one of those two do you think is a better path forward if Penn State has to go to the break glass in case of emergency with the offensive line?
Yikes. I mean, that's a tough one, because Drew Shelton was a guy that got reps there last year. So you would think that would be the way that they go. But I think Wallace has the, more of the body type. We've been talking about him as potential guard. I think if he goes pro, he's probably a guard. So like he's got that body type. So you want to put him beside Olu and see what happens. I think that would be an interesting combination there. I think anybody beside Olu is going to be an interesting combination. By the way, Olu last night went up against Chop Robinson twice. And Chop is phenomenal. Like he is awesome. He is a potential first round pick as an edge rusher, because he's that good. He's that twitchy. He's that everything. Olu just swallowed him up twice. And it was like one of those times when you're just sitting there laughing, because it's it's almost not fair against a guy that's a high level draft pick prospect as well. So that was good. But back to your original question, I don't know. I would say if James is going to come out and say Caden's been practicing there, then that would be my lean there to see him there. But I mean, I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, it's just interesting, seeing Drew Shelton up close and personal. Yesterday, he was one of the players available to us in practice, and it's he's in the 310 pounds is what James Franklin said. It doesn't look like it. You look at Olu, you look at Caden, you look at grown man strength of older offensive linemen. Drew is still growing into his body. So putting him at guard, especially Penn State seems to value size and power on the inside, where sometimes you see offensive lines where they value that athleticism on the interior for certain schemes. They want some big dudes on the interior. Vega and Sal, they're all big physical dudes. So Shelton, it's just interesting looking at him and his propensity for being a run blocker, and thinking there's still so much room for development on his frame, and obviously as a pass protector. So it would be interesting either way if you try to slice that. The one thing I would say that I noticed was Mike Yurcich was feisty yesterday. He's always loud. He's always animated. He's always very specific with what he's saying. But there was much more of a zero tolerance policy, much less, I don't want to say much less coaching, but more enthusiastic coaching of you have to be here with your route. You have to do this with the ball. Drive the ball. Don't float the ball down the field for the quarterbacks. And just the passing game, he talked about it in the bye week of we've got to get those things down. It sounds like the gloves are coming off. We've tried to be instructive. We've tried to emphasize this, but now it's you are getting exclamation points from Mike Yurcich, which he might do that elsewhere in practice. We don't see it, but that's the first time I've seen him in a while, I guess, be very, 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 very animated instead of just very animated. James Franklin's press conference starting yesterday. Nate, I want to come to you so that we can have this conversation again about what happened on Tuesday, and then his statement to start Wednesday's press conference, because he normally doesn't start with an opening statement, but he did yesterday because of the I don't want to say misconstrued, because it was just factually incorrect, his point that he made about conference scheduling. So can you set this all up and explain what happened?
I can try. It's a little convoluted, but he was asked about scheduling, right? And so
on Tuesday,
on Tuesday, and this is a 10-year conversation at this point, right? Penn State, Pitt, Penn State, big name, right? Florida
Auburn.
State, whatever. All of these things that have been talked about over the last 10 years. Basically, James Franklin from day one has been fairly clear and consistent in the notion that a 9-game Big Ten schedule makes it unappealing to schedule anyone with a pulse in the non-conference, because you need to win those games, one, but two, you need to have 7 home games. And 3, it does not help you in the college football playoff, right? Whatever the format has been, whether it's 4 teams right now in the college football playoff or 12 that is upcoming, it is strength of schedule is not actually part of the conversation. Winning all your games that's it. Is just win all of your games. If you lose a game, that's okay too. Two lost teams aren't going to make it. So 1 or 0 losses, and then just win all your games, and you're going to make it in those formats. So that is effectively his position for the last 10 years. Tuesday, he was asked about it, and he said, look, I don't think that's going to change with the 12-team playoff, right? That you're still going to want that. And then he pointed out that another team, and
previous institution sort of vibes.
To his miscredit, right? He doesn't specify sometimes. And in this case, he said there's another institution in the Big Ten that has been buying out of its marquee games in the non-conference, right? And so that could have meant a couple of different teams. We've seen Ohio State has an example. Michigan has a couple of examples. Indiana has a couple of examples of paying to get out of Power 5 matchups over the last few years. Michigan fans and maybe some blogs, you name it, got offended by that and said, hey, you're playing a terrible team this weekend. You haven't played anybody in the non-conference, as well as a few national reporters, or at least one national reporter, And so that turned into this big whole thing. And James Franklin responded to it last night by saying, look, not only are you not getting right, like misconstruing what I'm saying, but also this is like the exact opposite of what my point is. And the point is it's a compliment to those teams. It is saying, look, this is what Penn State is trying to emulate. Penn State doesn't want to play marquee non-conference games, and it's not going to change. It will continue to want to play games like UMass and Delaware into eternity as long as James Franklin is the head coach. So that's it. That's
yeah.
It's a whole lot of nothing other than I do think his intention last night on Wednesday night and what he said was to get in front of the notion that this is like bulletin board material for Ohio State or Michigan, because it's not. It's the opposite of bulletin board material. It is, hey, those guys, those ADs at Michigan and Ohio State, they scheduled correctly. They followed the blueprint and did this right, and they have reaped some of the rewards because of it.
Yeah, and the question, I think we have a couple questions in the chat about maybe a future whiteout game against former Pac-12 teams, and Fitz, like with the addition, and this is where it all started, with the addition of these other strong teams that are historically good. I think this is the point that James Franklin is making, is now you're playing more quality opponents. So your opportunity for losing 2 games goes up because Penn State plays a 9-conference game schedule in the Big Ten. And when you're adding teams, it's not likely that you're going to play less conference games. So I guess the follow-up question is then like, is this just kind of switching out 6 for half a dozen, like it's just in the vernacular of the sentence of you're still going to be competing against a strong schedule, and it's not 2 losses anymore against Michigan and Ohio State, but now you've got to factor in Oregon and Washington, etc.
Yes. I mean, you look at the home schedules for the next couple of years, and there's, I don't want to say there's always going to, like, for years it's been Ohio State or Michigan, and then everybody else. Like, you've got, Auburn's nice to pop up on the schedule. Your whiteout game was was Iowa this year, West Virginia. So a couple of second tiers, but I mean, you never know how good these teams are going to be. And, Michael Penix leaves Washington. Is that, what kind of team does he leave behind next year? But Washington's still, in my eyes, at least, a marquee game on that schedule. You go to 2025, you go, Iowa, Michigan State, Ohio State, UCLA, like Rutgers is there as well. But like, this is not like every other, we've gotten into the schedule where you get used to Rutgers, you get used to Maryland, you get used to Indiana. And, because you're playing in the divisions, that's the good part of that division. Of course, the complete flip side is that division is keeping you out of the playoff for now. But no, I think it's going to be a situation where your focus is entirely on that conference schedule. We'll see if they go to 10 games. I don't think they go to 10 games like in the immediate future, but like I know it's been on the table for a while. So I don't know, man. Like it's going to be a situation where you find yourself with a quality opponent for a whiteout, and it's going to be different. And then TV's going to muck it all up. Essentially, you're going to find yourself in a noon kick with a team that you thought was a marquee opponent. So I think they'll play it kind of just like they did this year. They're Iowa, for what Iowa was a focus game on the schedule. I don't want to say a marquee game, but it was a focus game. Like Penn State fans got that schedule and they said, all right, we're going to circle this one. Remember 2021 in Iowa City or whatever. So I think there's going to be a lot of those focus games that are just, second tier, but, still pretty fun whiteout games.
And to Nate, I'm going to steal your point and provide a little context of 12-team playoff, more opportunities, right? That's great. It's still 17.6% of the 68 teams that are realistically in the college football playoff conversation. So this is not baseball. I don't know the number specifically, but like football, like NFL is getting close to 30% of the league makes the playoffs. And that's, much you can afford to lose 2 games in September or October if you're a football team, because it's not 4% of all teams that play football. You're still aiming for very few losses in college football.
Most of the major sports, right? The sports that have playoffs have between 35 and 45% of their participants, their regular season participants, that make the playoffs, that reach the playoffs in some capacity. College football is the complete aberration. Even college basketball, is way off, right? For a long time, when people started talking about 96 teams, it was like, oh my goodness, how can you possibly damage this? It's because it's not representative enough. You are not given enough opportunities to reach the postseason. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But I do think that that Penn State under James Franklin and now with Pat Kraft behind him are like all in on, hey, do not schedule, do not play those games. They do not help you. There's no world where it's like, oh, you play because you played LSU and Florida State as two of your three non-conference games and lost both of them, that we're somehow going to forgive a third loss, or that even two losses. You could have two non-conference out of losses, win your conference, and still not make the playoff under those circumstances. It's nonsense.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts, Nate, from James Franklin's press conference? Anything that stood out to you outside of maybe the things we've highlighted already, the things that came out in neon? Anything kind of below the surface you thought was interesting?
Yeah, I did think that the conversation about the running backs and playing on instinct is, I don't know if curious is the right word, because just to give a little background here for people who are not aware, Mike Yurcich said that they wanted to be, last week during the bye, said something to the effect of, we want them to trust their instinct. We want them to trust was kind of the word, right? Yeah. But to carry those things that got them to this level, we want them to continue to have that and be careful to not go overboard in terms of instruction. And T. Frank, I mean, honestly, I think that we've been having this conversation pretty much all year, right? About the notion of being overcoached. And James Franklin said it last night. He was like, that's what you're concerned about, that you want to guard against overcoaching these guys, with the caveat, not that I'm saying that we're doing that, right? So I don't think that it was an indictment necessarily on what's happened so far, but you're trying to avoid that. You're trying to avoid a part where Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are thinking and second guessing themselves while they're in the hole, right? Like, did they make the right choice? Because from the coach's vantage point, either up in the box or on the sideline, and on film, it's a lot easier to make those calls, to have that second guessing and make those judgments after the fact. And so the basis of it is, look, when what he's saying is, look, Nick Singleton was the Gatorade Player of the Year and the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, all of that stuff, because he's elite. He's been doing this his whole life. Katron Allen, the same deal, right? These are who these guys are. And Penn State is, I wouldn't say wary of it, but is at least aware of the fact that they don't want to get into a position where these guys are losing those elite qualities because they're thinking too much. They're doing too much thinking.
Fitz, looked like you had a follow-up. Did you want to add something to that?
No, I had an inappropriate joke that I'm not going to make on a podcast. But no, we said it on a couple of weeks ago, like overcorrection. Like you talk about overcoaching, but like overcorrection is, I think, kind of how they've dealt with it. And that's caused an issue. Like it's caused an issue with changing the way that they run. And as Nate said, second guessing yourself when you're in the hole. Like that's something that you absolutely cannot do, is just, think. So like, no offense to these guys, but like you run off of instinct. These guys have run off of instinct all of their lives, and it's served them very well. They're very talented backs. But that overcorrection is really what's, I think what's been holding them back.
I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the collective back here, but it's a relief whenever we say something for 2 or 3 weeks and then you hear James Franklin say it independently. I doubt he watches the show, so I don't think he's like, you know what, they're right, that's how you should phrase it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's always a relief when it's like he says it and I'm like, okay, whew, that was not so far off from what I was thinking.
We did it.
Let's get to the game. Let's talk about Penn State's homecoming game. Somebody asked me yesterday, hey, why have you been labeling everything homecoming? I'm like, would you rather it be UMass? Which one's more interesting to you? So we're talking about the homecoming game.
That, by the way. We'll throw him under the bus.
That would be Ryan. He just texted me last night. He's like, why is everything labeled UMass? I'm like, marketing, baby. We want people to be excited for homecoming. It has much more of a nostalgia feel. So let's get into the game. I don't think we're going to be talking specifically about UMass. Again, this is so disrespectful, and I apologize. But Penn State fans want to know about what to expect from this game in Penn State. Fitz, you said health is the number one thing, getting to the Ohio State game full bore. Is there anything you're looking for from an on-field production standpoint, player personnel standpoint that you want from this game to help with that?
You want Venga Ione to continue to get more comfortable, like, because, without JB Nelson in there, you want to get him as many reps as possible. And, I think he can play his way into his potential. They're very high on him, but he's not there yet. And that's not a cut on him or anything like that. He's still a young guy who is learning the ropes, and he's got a couple guys beside him. You slot him in at left guard between Olu Fashanu and Hunter Norzad. Like, that's a great place to learn for a young guard. So, hopefully he comes along. You want to see big plays. And then that's the thing. I wrote my prediction, no matter what Penn State does on offense, they score 50 points. Nobody's going to be particularly impressed or particularly moved by it. I think, I'm not saying it's a no-win situation, but you're not going to change anybody's opinion about, hey, do it against Ohio State, do it against Michigan. I mean, nobody's opinion is going to change on that. We'll see Trey Wallace back out there, and I think that's very important in terms of getting his timing down. Those throws out to the boundary earlier this year, very important for Penn State's offense to function as a whole. Be interesting to see if they need those long drives again this weekend. They sustain what they've been doing on offense and what they've been doing well. We talk about all the holes in the offense, but they've done some nice things in terms of ball control, in terms of protecting the football. You just want to see that continue, but all eyes are still on Columbus at this point, at least in the fan base. You got to focus, because winning football games is hard and every week. And UMass has done a nice job in terms of not turning around the program, but infusing some talent into that program. They've used the portal well, for a 1-6 team. They've used the portal well. They're putting up points. They're throwing the ball semi-competently. They've thrown, I know game script is a big thing for them, but they've thrown 69 times over the last 2 weeks. And that's not really what Penn State has seen. And they've actually completed 49 of those passes, which is definitely not what Penn State has seen. So I'll stop short of labeling this as a big test for the secondary, but considering what they've seen, it's not far off.
Nate, one of your observations about the defense, I'm just going to do a quick preview for the 5 things coming up tomorrow, why Penn State was working on turnover and catching the ball on defense. That's coming up tomorrow. Some of the stats I'm looking at here, good, as Fitz just said, good completion percentage to their own receivers, but there's some other stuff in there as well. But Nate, so this game, from an attendance standpoint, James Franklin also highlighted, hey, sell your tickets if you're not coming. It doesn't matter in this game. Do you expect this to be a poor turnout and kind of a sleepy affair? We've talked about slow starts before. The offense hasn't really started fast in any game so far this year, to my recollection. Is that important to you? And does the crowd have an effect on that?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't care about any of those things. I think that people are either going to show up or they're not. It's the tickets were $30, right? That was part of the among the games that weren't sellouts at the start of the season. It was UMass and Rutgers that they had a special promotion to sell for $30. So maybe the people that paid those $30 a ticket to go feel more inclined than the season ticket holders who have the entire opportunity to go all year and can just throw their tickets away. But other than that, I just look, this is a team that Penn State has better athletes, right? Make plays. That's when I look at this game, it is not about forgive me, chucking it deep. It's not about the deep passing game. It's not about anything other than, on both sides of the ball, whether it's interceptions, forcing fumbles on defense, or beat your guy, right? And which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Okay. There's a reason that it doesn't happen that frequently, but you have an opportunity to not out scheme and outsmart your opponent, but just be better than them. And so I do think that it is important for Penn State. This is what did Josh Pate call it? Xbox coordinators.
Xbox coordinator. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to Xbox coordinator this. You want to feel good. You want to feel good about yourself going into next week. You want to have a vibe of hey, there's a muscle memory of having an 80-yard touchdown, right? Like,
Yep.
get one of those in the bag so that you can go into this second half of the season feeling as though it's not like Nick Singleton has admitted it, like not admitted it, but acknowledged it. This season has been frustrating for him at times, right? I think that Keandre Lambert-Smith has shared some of the same sentiment. Like, these guys expected to make big plays all the time. And it hasn't happened. It hasn't come together for them necessarily the way that they have thought that it would have. So I do think that it's important in this game, particularly going into Ohio State, to just get a couple of those, get a couple of home runs and see where the chips fall after that.
How they do that is what I've been studying this week, not the if they'll score a lot of points, but where might you see that come? And I think it'll be interesting to see different parts of the offense if they function against I don't want to say radically different, but definitely different than what they've seen defensive coverage scheme than the first 5 games. Because I think that when you talk about this conversation of the explosive deep passing play, the defense has something to say about it, and they have faced a number of defenses specifically tailored to take away explosive passing plays down the field through certain areas as well. So again, not to promote tomorrow too hard, but that's what I'm going to be talking about on the show tomorrow is where might those big plays come from. So let's talk about those points, because you guys are giving Penn State a good number of points. Fitz, we're coming to you for your score prediction on the game.
Yeah, I have Penn State, of course, winning big. The weather should play a factor in this, and I didn't really take that into factor when I made my prediction. 52-10 is what I have for Penn State. I mean, I do think UMass can score, and I don't necessarily know that it's going to be on Penn State's first team defense, but like they've scored over 20 points 5 times so far this year. They did it 3 times all last year. So there's elements of a team that can score. They can't stop anybody, but they can score. Quarterback Tyson Pumachan of years ago portal fame. Penn State did some back channeling on that one, and he never went into the portal from Clemson. Then he eventually did go in from Georgia Tech. He played at Avon Old for him. So like there was a prior relationship. He came to camp. Penn State recruited him. So there was a lot of those logic points that we talk about when we're talking about portal guys. That was a guy that Penn State explored. He never went into the portal. He ended up at Georgia Tech, and then he ended up at UMass. He's he's thrown the ball pretty well the last couple of games. Again, game script is what it is. Completed 76% of his throws against Arkansas State and 65% against Toledo in the last 2 weeks. Has thrown 3 picks in his last 3 appearances. I think that'll show up this weekend as well. So I think Penn State's going to have a chance to take it the other way and have an opportunity to, as much as UMass should be throwing the ball. And I don't know if it's going to be a complete downpour. I'm not a weather guy, and I don't want to talk about weather, but it'll have some sort of impact on this game. But yeah, I agree with Nate. I think you want to hit those big plays. It's you want to Xbox coordinate and just say, hey, get Nick Singleton to the outside one time and let him bump it out and let him go and let him feel what running 70 yards unabated to the end zone, like with that crowd around him, like let him know what that feels like again. Because once you recapture that feeling, you're like, all right, that's confidence. That's where you want to be. And again, timing and confidence is something this offense needs to keep going to win a game next weekend that they can win. That their defense is going to keep them in, and they just got to carry their part of it. But this week should be able to do so. UMass's defense not good at all.
There was one run where he was outside against Iowa, and he was running so hard because he was in the open for the first time. I thought he might go Super Saiyan or get to 88 miles an hour and go back in time. Like, he really wants to get into open field.
You really wanted to get that one in, didn't you?
I was going to force that one in no matter what. Nate, what's your score prediction?
Listen, I feel like I got shamed at the beginning part of the season for not predicting enough points. And so I might be overcorrecting here. I've got 63-6. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is weather aside, the weekend where maybe it does come a little bit easier, right? The everything to this point in the season has been so textbook perfect in a lot of ways, right? The time of possession thing, the complementary football, all of those things have been so like, man, this is how you win football. You can beat anybody by doing it this way. And I think that that's good and well, and something that will serve Penn State well down the season, but now it's time to stretch your legs a little bit. Okay. You get this chance that there is no risk of losing a game like this at home against this quality of an opponent. And so get it going, like just get it going. And so instead of 6-10 play plus drives of 5 minutes or more, okay, work on your 2-minute offense this week, right? Like work it, because truly I do think that it had been a point, I don't know, of emphasis, but like that's something that this program has wanted to be able to do and hasn't been able to do for years, is to have a 4-minute offense. All right, you got that. Check that box.
You don't need to run it for the entire first and third quarter.
What does the 1-minute offense look like? What does the 30-second offense look like? And defensively, the same deal. I mean, just they're going to do what they do. The defense is fine. They're going to do what they do, create turnovers, all of that stuff. But hey, maybe a few short fields that adds to the point total. Go from there. We'll see.
So I will say it's been good that they did not hit a lot of explosive plays against Northwestern, because people were angry and they were very active in the postgame show. Coming up this weekend.
T-Frank, can you put that comment from PSU fan 78 up there just about the chains? Yeah. Just move the chains, get some points. Big plays are not a W is a W. What internet are we living on here? Like that's not acceptable to a lot of Penn State fans, and including ones that follow the program very closely. Like that's not going to work. T-Frank throws his body out as a meat shield after the post-game show, and they're 5-0. I mean, like, let's be honest here. But no, we appreciate the comment. I just wanted to get that one in. A win is a win does not suffice against UMass. If I write that in my post-game column, I would be rightfully shredded.
You have to have some level of higher aspiration than just winning a game like this. That I truly do believe that. When James Franklin, and this goes into every single game that they play. Yes, obviously the win is the most important thing, but there's a reason that James Franklin rattles off all of these differential thing, right? Like they want to hit a certain percentage of explosive plays every game. They want to hit a certain number of turnovers every game, takeaways, right? Like those things are important. And in a game like this, it's magnified because you're not just playing the opponent, you're playing yourself as well. And to be prepared for what's coming, that means that it's time to pass the test.
To follow up the point that Fitz made, we'll be doing a live postgame show against UMass, and Northwestern people were angry about not getting explosive plays. If they do get them, I'm just asking the thousands of people that are watching this here, just check in for maybe 5 minutes against them, because you're my co-host. These guys are busy at the stadium doing their job. I need someone to talk to, and if it is a grassland and me and the cows in the tailgate lot, it's going to be a long post-game show. So it's UMass, it's late in the year, everyone is saving up all their nuggets for Ohio State. Just check in for a couple minutes of the post-game show. Appreciate that. Guys, we have speaking of nuggets, we got some golden nuggets in the BWI mailbag I want to get to. The chat has been great, so we're going to get to that now. First off, want to get to Blizzard Warning. He says no comment. Just appreciate what you guys do. Appreciate you always being here. Hope you come back again for the UMass postgame show. Andrew Carl has some flamethrowers here that I want to get to. He says, do you think PSU will stick to the ground game this week? Because historically, we see Massachusetts attacked and won if by land.
Nate?
Listen. Andy Carl is a friend of the program. He wants some attention. We'll shout him out. All right. Hi, Andy. Hello. You've got a lot of great one-liners in there.
He's Natalie back with another one.
Yeah, that really got it for me.
Will Adam Brenneman be listening to Natalie Imbruglia this week, because he is torn during Saturday's game?
I do have an answer to that. Adam is calling Army Troy this weekend, so he's not going to be at the game. I was actually just texting with him about it. So, you get some information there, Andy.
Let's get to some of the questions from the Blue White Illustrated mailbag from the Lions Den message forum. Once again, the best way to get your question featured here on the show. If you've got a great one-liner, sure, but we will answer and give some substantive conversation to things that come from the Blue White Illustrated mailbag over on the site. Great reason to sign up. So let's get to this one. This one's perfect for you, Fitz. This might be a better question for the Monday recruiting show, but Fitz is on both shows. So he's going to ask it here. I know winning doesn't hurt recruiting, but does winning outweigh NIL?
Boy, that's tough because I don't know that we have enough evidence so far to say one way or the other, because like the really good, the schools that jumped ahead with NIL, Texas A&M, Michigan State, did not follow it with winning. Miami, you could throw in there, but they've won up until this past weekend. Like those guys have seen, I don't want to say mass exit. Well, I guess Texas A&M kind of did. Like you have seen an issue where it's popped up and these kids are getting there and thinking, okay, maybe this isn't what I planned. And maybe some people didn't follow through on their NIL. So I think as it continues to go along this path until we get to the revenue sharing and all that kind of stuff, which seems inevitable a couple of years down the road, like I think people are becoming more aware of how much this NIL is worth versus like, hey, if I'm on a bad team, like, and you can make the NFL from a bad team, but like, I'm going to showcase myself as part of this program. And, Georgia just lost a complete NIL deal to Miami for a receiver. Like it's like nothing about that was recruiting or anything like that. It's going to be interesting to track that progress and see how many of those guys they're going to be able to, turn, how many of these guys are going to be able to, resist the allure of the NIL. Whereas Georgia's fine. Like Georgia's fine without him. Georgia's winning. Like Georgia doesn't have sparkling NIL. Like it's not a situation where they're the most, they're not Texas A&M in terms of throwing money around, but there's a balance there. Like you can make good money. You can also win championships. And I think that there's still a draw to winning championships. And you've got to get there. I think, losing, as Rick just said in the chat, losing is going to hurt you more than probably more than winning is going to help you. Like if that makes any sense. So I think it's too early to make that determination, but I think it's a really good question. And I think it's something worth tracking. And whether it goes to recruiting, portal, retainment, which is like something we don't really talk about enough, is keeping your own guys, to keep that nucleus, to keep your culture, your program culture, which is evolving at every school right now because of NIL, to keep that intact. And Penn State's done a really nice job with that. You haven't lost anybody to just straight NIL deals. And, I'm curious to see if there's going to be a first guy that makes that leap, and then how that goes for that person, and, whether or not anybody joins. And that's more of a nationwide type thing, that not singling out any guys at Penn State. But I just think that's a very interesting topic to balance which one is better. But you look at the recruiting rankings right now, and it's pretty much the usual suspects. There's a couple of schools in there that I don't want to say don't make sense, but like they're punching above their weight. Florida, I know, has like the number 4 class in the country. Yeah. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M is, it's a draw. Like, I don't know what to say about that, but it's a draw. Alabama, Florida State's winning right now. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Tennessee, LSU. So the recruiting rankings haven't changed a ton with NIL, but I think that there's some sort of evolution there.
Next question. I feel like we've addressed this pretty well, but I want to add in just one thing quickly here from Penn State 2012. Besides staying healthy, what are you looking for during the UMass game as a sign of success preparation for the Ohio State game? We covered that in the game preview, but I just want to throw in one final thing here, and you guys can respond if you've got any other additional comments. Seeing the offensive weapons together. We're expecting Trey Wallace to play. We're expecting Katron Allen to be there. Like, just that's my observation from the last couple of weeks of practice. So having a full complement of players, what does that do to the offense and the balance of their ability to have everyone on the field and then create credible threats on both sides of the football? Like literally on the left and right side of the offense. I think that's going to be interesting for me. Do you guys have any follow-ups of, we covered most of this, but any other nuggets you want to share here for Penn State 2012? All right.
Yeah,
let's move on.
For what it's worth, further down the depth chart, I think at receiver, you want to see them continue to take strides, right? You want to see fewer miscommunications there. You want to see fewer drop passes, like all of those things, continued progress for that group, because I'm not sure that we could say as a whole, as a unit, that you have seen consistent progress, right? So start to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm coming back to you for this question then. Sykem asks, Name a wide receiver we're talking about now positively besides Keandre Lambert-Smith, Dante Cephas, and Trey Wallace if healthy at the season's end. I don't know that I would put in Dante Cephas as somebody we're talking about positively, but who are you looking at in this game or going forward that Penn State needs to have a positive turnaround in that conversation, Nate?
I mean, I think Omari is kind of the obvious answer there. I'm not sure, right? I mean, Liam maybe, Caden maybe, but I do think that Omari is the guy who really hasn't done anything to this point in the season, absent the second half of Delaware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who there were high, relatively lofty expectations for before the start of the season. And so, assuming that his health and situations are all cleared up and, can be resolved by the time that you get to the meat of this back half of the schedule. Yeah, that's a guy who Penn State, put it this way, Penn State should hope that he makes that stride, because if he doesn't, I do think that there are some pretty significant questions there, right, for the receivers.
Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, I think with Penn State to be at its best, Omari would be a big part of that, like to be able to stretch the field the way that he does. And, you get everything, if you get everything for him to come together. I'm going to say Liam Clifford, because I think it's interesting to watch over the last couple of weeks, and we know, the stereotypes and everything like that. But like, if Liam is number 2, I'm not sure he is effective as he is as a number 3. Like we saw that early in the year, making good plays out of the slot and doing some good things and being a chain mover and things like that. I think he's more effective with Trey Wallace in the lineup. Like, I know we were talking about trying to find a guy to step up, but like, I think he provides more value in the slot as a third guy. You can move him around. You can play him outside, with your 11 personnel as a third receiver. That's a pretty good option. So I'm interested to see what he does now that Trey's back in the lineup, because I think he can be a more productive player as a number 3 than a number 2.
Very well said. Absolutely agree with that 100%. He's been a very good third down option. He seems to have a good chemistry with Drew Aller, but you're not relying on him to be a volume target guy. At least that hasn't been the way they've gone about it so far this season. So this next question from Poncho 570. Midway point of the season, name your top 3 guys for the following. And I'll just say, give me one for each of these 3 questions. Older players who've exceeded expectations. The light has finally come on for you. Number 1. Number 2, young players who've been the most pleasant surprise. And number 3, top D squad player that you're expecting to solidly contribute next season. So that would be way too many guys, Poncho 570. We'll do one each. So Nate, I'm going to come to you again. Give me one for each of those.
Oh man. Okay. Older player who has exceeded expectations. I'll do the easy one. Hunter Norzad. I think he's been really good, and it made the right call coming back. Younger player who has been the most pleasant surprise. Pass. Top D squad player expected to Zion Tracy. Does he count?
Fitz, I feel like you're uniquely tailored for this question.
Yeah, that's not me. Sorry.
I mean, I was going to say Zion Tracy as well, but D squad player.
I did it
to see. Well, I mean, he's not really D squad, like, because he's traveling with the team and everything like that. A D squad player would be Kevion Keys, and I'm interested to see Penn State's numbers at linebacker next year, to see if he's a guy that can step in as a redshirt freshman, because I think physically he has the size, he's got the speed, he apparently is a pretty smart, coachable kid. But he has the ability to do that. And there's a lot of guys, and I've been writing about the freshmen the last 2 weeks on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But, you just keep going back to, hey, this offseason can be very big for him. Like, because it's his first offseason in a strength program with Chuck Losey. Yep. That's when you see the gains for those guys. So I'll go with Kevion Keys, even though Zion Tracy is a guy that, I think is going to, if not start opposite Cam Miller next year, play a lot. And I think that they're very sort of excited with how his career started, maybe exceeding expectations there a little bit. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Older players exceeded expectations. I mean, I keep going back to Caden Wallace as playing as a guy that, I know he's got still has some gaps in terms of like, plays that come off and misses, I guess you would say, but like he's been pretty good. Like Norzad's a good thing. We talk about the offensive line all the time. I know people get frustrated with it when they watch it, and then you go back and watch it and say, well, maybe it's not all on them. So I'm going to go with Caden Wallace, and I'm interested to see if they do have to play him at guard, what he looks like at guard. Like I think that's an opportune point to bring that up as well. Again, young guys who have succeeded. I think Zion Tracy's in there. I mean, we haven't seen a ton of King Mack. The little that we have seen, I've liked. He's kind of gone behind. Does KJ Winston count in here? Like he's still a young guy. Like he's still
he is. You're right.
He's a sophomore, and he just started for the first time this year. And I have to talk about him, contractually obligated to do so. Everybody knows that, and he's been damn good. He's been really good. Yeah. Going back to the first question, Daquan Hardy's been really good. Like he's been really good. And obviously next weekend is the litmus test for anybody in that secondary. But Daquan Hardy has done a really good job so far, basically playing receiver while playing defense. Like he has run routes for those guys. He's caught the ball. He has been a playmaker on that defensive side of the ball. Opposing offenses have helped, as Nate has pointed out, but I think Hardy deserves some credit there as well.
Well, Poncho 570 is going to get 3 players for each. That's all, folks. Each position, because we're all going to give individual guys. Wow. Okay. Number 1, I would say Hakeem Beamon has been a pleasant surprise for me because he has been very inconsistent. And this year, I think the main thing he has done is become more inconsistent in his play, in his style of play, his size, everything. And that's something that Penn State desperately needed. I think he is on the other side of the same coin for Caden Wallace. And Tony Rojas has blown my mind in terms of the level of play, what his instincts at the position, coming from defensive end. I always think that it's going to be hard for these guys to play in space because Tony, if you go back and watch his film, and I watched a lot of Fairfax when he was coming out of high school, he ran upfield on every single play. Like he was just speed, explosiveness. You can't touch me as a defensive end. And of course, on the offensive side of the ball, as a running back, kind of the same thing. So how do you play through contact? What are your instincts? How do you see in vision of all those things? They've been excellent. They've been, like, for a freshman, really, really, really good. And then the physical side of everything, coming in at a lean 190 and being, I think, near 230, 227, like moving from what we expected him to be as that Sam linebacker, and he's Will. Like, they moved him to Will very quickly. So that's kind of blown my mind. And then developmental squad player, I don't have a good read on one of those guys. I'm curious where Alex Birchmeyer will be next year. So I think that's just, I'll leave curiosity there for him. I just wanted to bring him up.
Big off season for him, as we said. And I have more answers, by the way. Adisa Isaac is a guy that I think a lot of people expected to get passed up by Denida and Sutton. He's been excellent. Like, he's been very good. I mean, pick your poison at that defensive end room. They've all been good, but he's a guy in there. And then, like, in the same breath as KJ Winston, Zane Durant. Like, I think we've moved him to a different category because we now expect more things out of him. He's been very good.
For sure. Yeah. We're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball, and this one coming to you, Fitz, because you were singled out. Since I know Sean loves these questions, when Manny Diaz leaves for a head coaching job after the season, meaning this one, wow, Losi's mustache coming in hot with this question and hot takes. Who would you put your money on as the internal promotion to defensive coordinator in for the 24 defensive coordinator job?
Shit, I don't know. I mean, I said it for years. It was Tim Banks, and Tim Banks got a coordinator job. Dex, maybe. Terry's gotten opportunities to run defenses at some smaller jobs. I think you give him that chance if that's the opportunity. But I think it would be an external hire, to be honest with you. I mean, it's. I'm reading the question now, kind of different than I took it in the first place. But I would go external. Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to leave that one just to you, Nate. I'm going to give you a break on that question. Blackheart 8541. We got 2 more to get here on the show. So this is more of a general football question, but also applied to PSU football this year. What are the advantages of the offense extending drives and grinding out time of possession, other than the obvious limiting the other side of the ball from having offensive possessions? It's always talked about, including in the NFL, that defense is on the field too much and getting too tired. Does this not apply to the offense as well? Does the offense not get tired or worn down? Just don't get how it can separate the two and how the advantage goes to the offense. Thanks. It's a great question, Blackheart. I think it's a genuinely, we talk about it in a one-sided thing, and it comes down to the nature of defense where even in Manny Diaz's defense, where you are dictating the flow of the offense by the things you're doing, you're still a reactionary squad. Guys are having to react to receivers, and if they're fatigued, their fast muscle twitch might not be as explosive. They might not get into position, and therefore you get more explosive plays because dudes are tired and they're chasing, as opposed to the offense who knows where they're going. Kind of the same conversation about slippery fields, snow on the field. Fitz, Nate, do you guys have anything to add there as well? Because I think it's an interesting question, interesting conversation, but that's just my read on that. Nate, do you have a read on that?
I think that you control the pace offensively, right? In terms of how many plays you're running, so that makes a big difference, right? And defensively, you like you said, I mean, it's not just reacting within the play; it's you are at the mercy of how many plays that opposing offense wants to run, whether it's tempo or not. It's just look, Mike Yurcich gave the best answer that I've ever seen regarding controlling the game to me this summer, just about how Penn State's running backs allow them to do that, but that being the overall goal, right? Is you want to dictate the terms of this engagement, and by having the ball, by possessing the ball offensively, that is part of it. That is part of the equation, or it can be part of the equation. It doesn't have to be the only way to win offensively, but it's something that is an extremely valuable tool to possess.
Fitz, got something?
Yeah, I mean, it's a push-pull situation. I think it's easier to, impress your will onto somebody rather than have to sit there. As a defense, you're it's harder to stop them scoring than it is to score. And I know it's hard to score, but it's you have to, you don't know what route they're running. You don't know how they're going to, attack you and things like that. You think you have a general idea, but I mean, it's called on the offensive for a reason. You're dictating the purpose, you're dictating the pace, you're dictating all that stuff. So, and that defense gets tired out fast. I mean, it's it's honestly it's going into the gym and doing a bench press, a chest workout versus doing like a hit CrossFit. You're going to get different kinds of tired. And by the end of it, by the end of your chest workout, you're fine. You can walk out of there. By the end of your hit workout, you're gasping for air. I mean, that's offense and defense right there. So that's kind of where you put yourself in terms of the fourth quarter. You make those calls, you dictate how things are going on offense. You kind of got to sit there and wait to see what happens on defense and then chase it. And chasing is exhausting.
Rick gets to the core of the mailbag with this. He says, no question, just a shout out. Really enjoy this format late in the week with you guys chatting, answering questions, giving extra commentary. Yeah, the information, the news, the hard stuff that you can get over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, you got to get it there. But we're going to provide some context and give you a good conversation. The things you can't always get specifically out of an article that is, 1,000 words, even if it's that long. So I appreciate Rick acknowledging what we're trying to do here on the show. One last question. This one directed at me, but you guys can answer as well. T. Frank, listening to you talk on the KSN show, I heard you say that it seems like Penn State has been running from their base offense most of the time. When they need to comes to expand back on that base offense, are you expecting to see some Penn State attack the seams in the middle of the field, or is that something that Mike just doesn't feel they can utilize this year? Yeah, so that's something I talked about with what we saw last year with the tight ends specifically, of attacking up the seams, attacking, over the middle of the field with those players. And Sean Clifford did that stuff. We have not seen that from Drew Aller. And that's an open question, David. I don't actually know the difference of, is that they don't feel like it fits the offensive style they want to go for this year, or is that, each quarterback likes different plays. And if Drew likes the comeback routes on the outside and he wants to feast on those, then they're doing what is best situated for him and for this offense. When I say the base offense, I should also clarify. I'm mostly talking about the run game when it comes to the base offense, where that's where a lot of the foundational pieces and play actions and RPOs come off of those looks to influence the defense. It's also the part I think I understand a little bit better, and I want to make that clear that I don't know everything about everything. I'm not in the offensive meeting room with Mike Yurcich. But when it comes to the offensive run plays, we've seen a lot of the base plays But the formational tweaks that he's used, we've seen them selectively of 2 tight ends in the backfield, the pistol formation, the offset pistol formation. We've seen them just a little bit, but do we see an expansion of any of those ideas later in the year? And that's where you're never going away from your base offense. You are just tweaking it either formationally or with some other, I don't want to say trick, but some other advantage you're trying to gain to run the same play, but for, to attack the defense in a different way. And there's things in the playbook that we saw last year that we haven't seen this year, including tight end usage. So I think that's kind of just my context of the base offense versus what they could do and what they've done in the past. And I hope that gives a little more context. You guys have any other thoughts you want to add on that, Fitz?
Drew can make those throws to the outside, and Sean could sometimes, but like nobody's going to make those throws as regularly as you're seeing Drew make them. And he's still a young quarterback. He started 5 games. Young quarterbacks stay out of the middle of the field. That's what happens. And I think that's part of that's with a purpose. Part of that is probably sort of an unconscious decision there by Mike Yurcich to take the risk out of it. And that's, they've been risk averse, obviously. I think that's been well documented, and he's still averaging 40 points a game, so that helps. But I think that's probably what they would come back to you with. Well, I mean, it seems to be working right now, even if it's not working the way that we sort of drew it up or the way that fans want it to happen. It's still working in certain ways, and I think it comes down to what the weapons that they have on the outside. Like, I think again, getting Trey Wallace back, I think is going to be a big deal. Like, it's going to be a situation. Like, I don't know how many times you look at the film over the last 3 weeks and you just say there's something missing here, and you can pretty clearly identify that it's Trey Wallace. Like, it's not a situation where you're like, hey, where's the missing piece? Well, he's on the sideline. He's wearing sweats or whatever he's doing. So I think that's a big deal. And, you hopefully things will click the way that they clicked a couple of times early in the season.
Nate, some quick final thoughts here. We're getting to the end of the show. We're on the red line. So I just want to get you guys out of here at least semi on time. What do you got coming up to this week and tomorrow at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com?
Great question. Lots of stuff.
Lots projected depth charts. How about that?
Listen, I wanted to get through this. I do have grades on the defensive side of the ball from the first 5/12 of the season that I will share, I guess, on Friday. But no, I go into the show with an open mind, and then on the backside, I kind of figure out what's next. I do think I'll probably have some basketball stuff there too over the next couple of days. But yeah, we'll see.
It's what you call a creative process. You don't want to rush it. You can't rush it. But it'll be great when it happens over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We'll have more shows coming up Friday, Saturday, the tailgate show. It's going to be freezing, and ES and I are going to be out there talking about Penn State football, getting you ready for the game against UMass. And, of course, like I said, I'll be here on the postgame show. Fitz, Nate, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate all your hard work. And we will be back again with more Penn State football talk. It's Ohio State next week. So get your pitchforks and your lanterns. We're gonna be super intense next week. Anyway, we'll talk to you later.